There's a strange pattern you start noticing as you grow older. The loudest people in the room are rarely the most confident. The people constantly seeking attention are usually the ones trying hardest to escape themselves. And the people who seem the calmest, the quietest, the most detached, are often the ones who understand the world the most. Modern society teaches people to fear being alone, to always stay connected, always entertained, always distracted. Silence has become uncomfortable because silence forces people to confront who they really are. But intelligent people react differently. They don't see solitude as punishment. They see it as freedom. Not because they hate people, not because they're antisocial, but because at some point in life, they realize something most people never do. Most noise is meaningless. Most conversations are shallow. And most people are terrified of honesty. So eventually, they stop chasing attention. They stop forcing connections, and they begin protecting their peace. And in a world addicted to validation, that kind of mindset becomes dangerous. The average person can no longer sit alone with their thoughts for even a few minutes. The moment silence appears, they reach for their phone. Scrolling has become an escape. Entertainment has become sedation, and constant stimulation has become a way to avoid self-awareness. People wake up and immediately consume noise. Music, videos, messages, notifications, opinions, arguments, anything to avoid stillness, because stillness is dangerous. Stillness forces people to notice the things they've been suppressing, their insecurity, their loneliness, their lack of direction, their fear of being insignificant. That's why modern life feels so loud, because silence exposes too much, and intelligent people eventually notice this. They realize that most people aren't actually thinking, they're reacting, consuming, copying, repeating. So instead of constantly participating in the noise, they slowly begin stepping away from it. Not dramatically, not angrily, just quietly. They stop needing constant attention. They stop explaining themselves to everyone. They stop trying to fit into environments that drain them. And from the outside, people mistake this for arrogance, but it isn't arrogance, it's exhaustion. One of the loneliest experiences in life is realizing you no longer relate to the people around you. Intelligent people often experience this earlier than others. They begin noticing patterns, the fake conversations, the performative friendships, the constant need people have to impress each other. They notice how uncomfortable honesty makes people. Most people say they want truth, but what they actually want is comfort. And once someone realizes this, social interaction starts feeling different. Surface-level conversations become exhausting. Fake enthusiasm becomes irritating. Small talk begins feeling like background noise. So intelligent people naturally spend more time alone. Not because solitude always feels good. Sometimes it hurts. Sometimes it feels isolating. But it still feels more peaceful than pretending. That's the part many people misunderstand. Intelligent people don't isolate themselves because they think they're better than everyone. They isolate themselves because they become tired of environments that feel emotionally empty. They would rather have one honest conversation than 100 meaningless ones. And over time, that changes the way they live. There's a reason deep thinkers throughout history spent long periods alone. Solitude sharpens observation. When people constantly surround themselves with noise, they lose the ability to notice. But in silence, the mind becomes clearer. People begin seeing manipulation more easily. They notice emotional dependency. They notice insecurity hidden behind confidence. They notice how many people change personalities depending on who they're around. And perhaps most importantly, solitude reveals the truth about yourself. Your weaknesses become harder to hide. Your habits become impossible to ignore. Your excuses lose power. That's why many people avoid solitude. Because solitude forces self-awareness. And self-awareness can be painful, but intelligent people eventually understand something important. Growth rarely happens in constant distraction. It happens in reflection, in silence, in uncomfortable honesty. That's why solitude often becomes a form of mental discipline. Not isolation, not sadness, discipline. Quiet people make others uncomfortable, especially in a world where everyone constantly performs for attention. People trust predictability. They trust people who overshare, people who constantly seek approval. But someone who remains calm, observant, emotionally controlled, becomes difficult to read. And what people cannot easily read, they often fear. That's why silence is frequently misunderstood. People assume quiet individuals are arrogant, judgmental, cold, detached. But many times, quiet people are simply careful. They've learned that not every thought needs to be spoken. Not every battle deserves energy. Not every relationship deserves access to them. And once someone understands this, their entire energy changes. They stop reacting emotionally to everything. They stop needing validation. They stop chasing temporary approval. And suddenly, they become powerful in a way most people don't understand. Because emotional control is rare. Very rare. The truth is, being alone is not the same as being lonely. Some people feel empty in crowded rooms. Others feel peaceful in complete silence. Intelligent people eventually realize that solitude is not about escaping the world. It's about understanding it. It's about protecting your mind from constant noise, protecting your energy from meaningless chaos, protecting your identity from becoming shaped by other people's expectations. And in a society obsessed with attention, someone who no longer craves validation becomes incredibly difficult to control. That is why solitude is powerful. Because the moment a person becomes comfortable alone, the world loses one of its strongest weapons against them: fear of isolation. And once that fear disappears, a person becomes truly free. There is another reason intelligent people often spend more time alone. A reason that has nothing to do with arrogance and everything to do with expectation. When people are young, they tend to believe that maturity is common, they believe honesty is valued, they believe kindness is appreciated, and they assume that most people are trying to become better versions of themselves. But life slowly reveals something different. Not everyone wants growth, not everyone wants truth, and not everyone wants to understand. Many people only want comfort. They want ideas that reassure them, opinions that validate them, conversations that never challenge them. Because growth requires discomfort, and discomfort is something most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Intelligent individuals eventually begin noticing this pattern. They notice how often people reject information that threatens their beliefs, how quickly facts become irrelevant when emotions become involved, how frequently people choose certainty over curiosity. And over time, this realization creates distance, not physical distance, psychological distance. Because it becomes difficult to connect deeply with people who are unwilling to question themselves. This does not make intelligent people superior. It simply changes what they seek. They stop searching for popularity and start searching for authenticity. They stop asking, "How many people like me?" and begin asking, "How many people truly understand me?" The difference is enormous, because one question is about attention, the other is about connection, and connection has always been far more rare. One of the most dangerous assumptions a person can make is believing that the majority must be correct. History repeatedly proves otherwise. Entire societies have embraced harmful ideas. Entire generations have followed destructive trends. Entire cultures have celebrated things that later became sources of regret. Yet people continue trusting crowds. Because crowds create comfort. There is safety in agreement. There is safety in belonging. There is safety in doing what everyone else is doing. Or at least, it appears that way. But intelligent people eventually recognize a strange contradiction. The crowd often rewards conformity, while progress is usually created by those willing to think differently. Every significant breakthrough, every revolutionary idea, every meaningful transformation started with someone standing apart from the majority, someone willing to tolerate criticism, someone willing to tolerate misunderstanding, someone willing to tolerate loneliness. That is why intelligent people become cautious about collective opinion, not because they assume they are always right, but because they understand that popularity and truth are not the same thing. Something can be widely accepted and still be wrong. Something can be unpopular and still be true. And once a person understands this, they stop measuring their beliefs by public approval. They begin measuring them by evidence, reflection, and experience. That shift changes everything, because now their sense of direction comes from within, not from the crowd.
Most people spend years building an identity, but very few spend time examining it. They know what others expect from them. They know how they are perceived. They know which version of themselves receives approval, but they rarely ask a more important question. Who am I when nobody is watching? Who am I when there is no audience, no praise, no criticism, no expectations, no performance. Solitude forces this question, and for many people the answer is uncomfortable, because beneath every social role lies a deeper self, a self that exists independent of reputation, independent of status, independent of validation. That self is easy to ignore in a busy life, but solitude has a way of bringing it to the surface. The distractions disappear, the noise fades, and eventually, there is nowhere left to hide. Only reflection, only honesty, only awareness. This is one of the reasons solitude can feel intimidating. It removes excuses, it removes masks, it removes illusions, and what remains is reality. But intelligent people eventually learn to appreciate this process, because self-knowledge is one of the most valuable forms of knowledge that exists. A person who understands themselves becomes difficult to manipulate, difficult to pressure, difficult to control, because they no longer depend on the approval of others to define who they are. And that kind of independence is powerful, very powerful. There is a hidden struggle that many intelligent people experience, and it has nothing to do with knowledge, nothing to do with success, and nothing to do with achievement. It comes from something far more subtle, the desire to be understood. At first, this desire seems simple. After all, everyone wants to be understood. Everyone wants to feel seen. Everyone wants to feel that their thoughts, their experiences, and their emotions matter to someone. But for people who spend a great deal of time thinking, the experience often becomes more complicated, because the way they see the world is rarely identical to the people around them. They notice connections that others overlook. They question assumptions that others accept without hesitation. They spend time examining ideas that many people never stop long enough to consider. And because of this, they often feel as if they are translating themselves, not from one language into another, but from one reality into another. They explain, they clarify, they simplify. And sometimes they simplify so much that the original meaning disappears entirely. It is like trying to describe an entire landscape through a keyhole. The picture is still there, but only a fraction of it can be seen. Over time, this becomes exhausting, not because intelligent people believe others are incapable of understanding them, but because they realize that understanding requires effort from both sides, and effort has become increasingly rare. Modern conversations often resemble two people waiting for their turn to speak, not two people trying to understand. Most people listen with the intention of replying. Very few listen with the intention of learning, and that difference changes everything, because true understanding cannot exist without curiosity. It cannot exist without patience, and it cannot exist without humility. The humility to accept that another person may see something you do not. Intelligent people eventually learn a difficult lesson. Not everyone will understand them, and not everyone is supposed to. Some people enter your life to accompany your journey. Others only cross your path briefly. Expecting complete understanding from everyone is like expecting every window to show the same view. It was never designed that way. Every person sees the world from a different position, a different history, a different set of wounds, a different set of hopes. Once this becomes clear, something begins to change. The need to be understood by everyone starts fading, and in its place, a quieter form of peace emerges. A person stops chasing recognition, stops over-explaining, stops trying to force connections that were never meant to exist. And for the first time, they begin conserving something precious: their energy. Because perhaps maturity is not learning how to make everyone understand you. Perhaps maturity is learning to remain yourself, even when they do not. There is freedom in that realization, a freedom that only arrives when a person no longer depends on universal approval, and once that freedom appears, solitude begins to feel less like a refuge and more like a home. As people grow older, something begins to change. The excitement of meeting new people slowly fades, not because people become bitter, not because they stop caring, but because experience teaches them something important. Not every connection carries the same value. When we are young, we often measure relationships by quantity: how many friends we have, How many people know our name? How many invitations we receive? How many conversations fill our days? But time has a way of revealing what truly matters. A person can have hundreds of contacts and still feel completely alone. A person can sit in a crowded room and still feel unseen. Because connection has never been about numbers. It has always been about depth. Intelligent people eventually recognize this. They begin noticing how many relationships are built upon convenience, how many friendships exist only because of proximity, how many conversations repeat themselves year after year without ever becoming meaningful. And slowly, their standards begin to change. They stop looking for people who simply agree with them. They start looking for people who challenge them, people who are honest, people who are thoughtful, people who are capable of growth. Because meaningful relationships resemble a deep well. The surface may appear calm, but beneath it lies something substantial, something capable of sustaining life. Shallow relationships are different. They resemble puddles after the rain, visible for a moment, gone shortly after. And once someone experiences true connection, the appeal of superficial relationships begins to disappear. That is why intelligent people often maintain smaller circles, not because they dislike people, but because they understand the difference between attention and connection. One can be collected endlessly, the other remains rare. And rarity increases value. That is true for gold, it is true for wisdom, and it is true for genuine human relationships. Perhaps one of the greatest signs of emotional maturity is the ability to enjoy your own company. This sounds simple, but for many people it is surprisingly difficult. The moment they find themselves alone, they search for distraction. Music, messages, television, social media, anything that fills the silence. Because silence often feels unfamiliar, and unfamiliar things make people uncomfortable. But intelligent people eventually discover something unusual. The relationship they have with themselves influences every other relationship in their life. If they cannot enjoy their own presence, they will constantly depend on others to escape it, and that dependence creates problems. Because people were never meant to become replacements for self-understanding. No relationship can permanently silence internal confusion. No friendship can permanently remove insecurity. No amount of attention can permanently create self-worth. These things must eventually come from within. Solitude helps reveal this truth. At first, it can feel uncomfortable, like entering a dark room after spending years in bright light. The eyes struggle to adjust. Everything feels unfamiliar. But given enough time, clarity emerges. The room was never empty. It was simply unexplored. The same is true of the mind. Many people spend their entire lives exploring the world, yet never explore themselves. They know distant cities, distant cultures, distant opinions, yet remain strangers to their own thoughts. Intelligent people eventually choose a different path. They become curious about their own minds, their fears, their motivations, their contradictions. And through that curiosity, something remarkable happens. Being alone stops feeling like isolation and starts feeling like companionship, because they have learned how to become friends with the one person who will remain with them for their entire life, themselves.
There is something most people never realize. Entire industries depend upon insecurity. They need people to feel inadequate. They need people to believe they are missing something. Not attractive enough, not successful enough, not wealthy enough, not popular enough. Because insecurity creates demand, and demand creates profit. The modern world constantly whispers the same message. You need more status, more recognition, more validation, more approval, more attention. The message rarely changes, only the packaging does. And the tragedy is that many people spend their lives chasing something that keeps moving further away, like running toward the horizon. No matter how far they travel, it never gets closer. Because the goal was never meant to be reached, it was meant to be pursued. Intelligent people eventually notice this cycle. They notice how comparison creates dissatisfaction, how dissatisfaction creates consumption, and how consumption temporarily disguises dissatisfaction, only for the cycle to begin again, over and over,
like a wheel spinning endlessly. That is why solitude becomes valuable. Solitude creates distance from the noise. Distance creates perspective, and perspective exposes manipulation. People begin asking different questions. Do I actually want this? Or was I taught to want it? Is this my goal or someone else's expectation? Am I making this decision freely? Or am I responding to pressure I never questioned? These questions are powerful, because once a person begins examining the forces influencing them, they become harder to control. And perhaps that is why self-awareness remains one of the most valuable forms of freedom. A person who understands themselves becomes far less vulnerable to those who profit from confusion. At the center of all solitude, all reflection, and all self-awareness lies a single destination: freedom. Not political freedom, not financial freedom. Something deeper: psychological freedom. The freedom to think without needing approval. The freedom to act without seeking validation. The freedom to remain yourself despite pressure. Most people spend their lives negotiating with the expectations of others, adjusting themselves, editing themselves, reshaping themselves, trying to fit into environments that were never designed for them. And little by little, they begin losing contact with who they truly are. Not all at once, but gradually, like a river changing its course over many years, so slowly that nobody notices, until one day it no longer flows where it once did. Intelligent people eventually recognize this danger. They understand that every compromise of identity carries a cost. Every mask becomes heavier over time, every performance becomes more exhausting, and every act of pretending creates distance from the self. That is why solitude becomes so important, because solitude removes the audience. And when the audience disappears, performance becomes unnecessary. There is no one left to impress, no one left to convince, no one left to satisfy. Only truth remains. Only awareness remains. Only self-knowledge remains. And from that place, a rare kind of freedom begins to emerge. The freedom to live according to your values. The freedom to think independently. The freedom to walk away from what diminishes you. The freedom to choose peace over approval. Many people spend their entire lives searching for freedom in the outside world, yet the deepest freedom has always existed within. Hidden beneath fear, hidden beneath expectations, hidden beneath the endless need to belong. And perhaps that is the final lesson solitude teaches. The moment you no longer need the crowd to tell you who you are, the crowd loses its power over you. And perhaps that is the rarest form of freedom a human being can ever experience. Perhaps the greatest misunderstanding about solitude is that people see it as something a person loses themselves to. They imagine empty rooms, silent evenings, distance from the world, distance from people, distance from life itself. But solitude was never meant to create distance from what matters. If anything, it does the opposite. It removes the distractions that make it difficult to see clearly. Because most people spend their lives surrounded by voices, the opinions of strangers, the expectations of family, the demands of society, the endless pressure to become someone more successful, more admired, more accepted. And in the middle of all that noise, something important is often forgotten: the person they already are. That is why solitude can be so valuable, not because it provides answers, but because it creates the conditions where answers can finally be found. It gives people space to think, space to reflect, space to question the beliefs they inherited, the fears they carry, and the goals they have been pursuing for years without ever asking why. In many ways, solitude acts like a mirror, not the kind that reflects your appearance, but the kind that reflects your character, your habits, your motives, your values. And what that mirror reveals is not always comfortable. Sometimes it reveals insecurity. Sometimes it reveals fear. Sometimes it reveals how much of life has been shaped by the expectations of others. But it also reveals something else: potential. The possibility of becoming more honest, more self-aware, more intentional. Because a person who understands themselves begins moving through life differently. They stop chasing every opportunity. They stop reacting to every opinion. They stop measuring their worth through the eyes of strangers. And slowly, they begin building a life that feels authentic. Not perfect, not effortless, but real. Perhaps that is what intelligent people ultimately discover. That peace does not come from controlling the world. It comes from understanding themselves. That freedom does not come from escaping responsibility. It comes from escaping the need for constant approval. And that solitude is not the absence of connection. It is the foundation of meaningful connection. Because only when a person knows who they are can they truly connect with others without pretending to be someone else. And maybe that is the lesson hidden beneath all of this. The goal was never to avoid people. The goal was never to isolate yourself from the world. The goal was simply to become comfortable enough with yourself that your happiness no longer depends on the crowd. Because the world will always be noisy. There will always be opinions, expectations, comparisons, distractions. But when a person learns how to sit quietly with themselves, without fear, without discomfort, and without the need to be someone else, they discover something rare. A sense of peace that cannot be given by others, and cannot be taken away by them either. And perhaps that is why intelligent people often choose solitude, not because they are running away from life, but because for the first time, they have found their way back to themselves.